Any sinner is capable of being a great saint, and any saint is also capable of being a great sinner. The secret, therefore, of character development is the realization of this power that there is in each and every one of us, for good and for evil. And the good Lord would have us lay hold of what is worst in ourselves. Do not think that people who have virtue and kindness and other great talents just came by these things naturally. They had to work at them very hard.
In a world that lowers the bar, we are here to raise that bar. Welcome to Ascend Through Virtue. I am your co-host, John Sablan.
And your co-host is here, Keone Sublon, as well.
This is where everyday grit meets the pursuit of holiness. Keone, we got some exciting things coming up. I know we're going to get into our guest with us a second week in a row, Rose Sweet. We had a great time with her last week. We'll get to that in a second, but we got some exciting things happening on this feast day of Saint Padre Pio in the new calendar. We actually have a great intercessory saint of ours. We have our first, I guess, our inaugural Catholic Men's Conference happening here in Arizona this Saturday on 27th in Scottsdale, Arizona. You excited about that?
That's one way to describe it. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what to expect, but I do know uh, it'll be powerful and it's going to inspire the hearts of men. So I'm so excited for us to really start something new, I think, and revitalize men's conferences in the Phoenix diocese. I think it's been a long time coming, and I'm pumped to see the impact for sure.
Yeah, it's exciting. So for those of you who aren't aware, we've kind of been without for several years now in the Diocese of Phoenix, where we've had a pretty prominent men's conference across the country, probably top 10, if not top five. And for the last several years, we've just kind of gone without. And so it's been on my heart in particular, but the heart of our apostolate world ablaze, as well as with Servium, to revitalize the bringing together of men to learn and grow and to be the men that God called us to be. And we are kicking off that with our inaugural Terror of Demons conference. That'll be the annual name of the conference, Terror of Demons, under the patron saint of Saint Joseph, Terror of Demons, as well as I just learned this by praying the sorrowful devotion, the Seven Sorrows Rosary, under the title of Our Lady, Terror of the Treacherous. So between Saint Joseph, Terror of Demons, and Our Lady, Terror of the Treacherous, we are going to have an amazing time. So for those of you who are brothers out there, know somebody that would benefit from this, we'll still be selling tickets. We'll be selling tickets at the door. It'll be held at Villa de Marie in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have already over 250 men that are signed up across 5 different states. Arizona, obviously, California is represented, as well as New Mexico, Idaho, and Nevada. So if you want to come join us, and you don't have to be in one of those 5 states, you can be anywhere you want to be. But just come join us in Scottsdale with some a great day of sacraments and brotherhood. We will have the priestly fraternity of St. Peter with us, from the local parish, Mater Misericordiae in St. Edward's Parish. They'll be celebrating the Mass. We'll be having a high Mass. It is Ember Days for those of you who practice that devotion. So we'll be doing a day of prayer and fasting. It'll be a high Mass, so you get to experience the extraordinary form in its beauty in the high Mass. And we'll have confessions. We'll have a time for a rosary. And then we have dynamic speakers, talks that'll be given by Devin Schott, Dr. Dan Schneider, Jesse Romero, this arrow in my quiver, Keone Sablan, and yours truly. So we're super excited. So men, you got to join us. And we have the presence of 5 relics. We'll be having the National Center of Padre Pio with us. Nick Gibboni, the executive director, is going to be joining us. He's busy with Padre Pio festivities today out there on the East Coast, but he'll be bringing 5 different relics of St. Joseph, St. Benedict, Padre Pio, as well as St. Philip Neri and St. John Vianney. So excited for that. Now, last week, we got into the topic of know thyself. And in particular, we got into the topic of temperaments. Karen, I don't know about you, but it was a really exciting conversation they had with our sister, with the same Holy Mother, Rose Sweet, who we welcome to the show, back to this show again for all 4 segments to talk about work that she's done over the course of her career, and her work in this field. But in particular, we're talking about her new book, My Type of Holiness, Striving for Sainthood with the Temperament that God Gave Me. Rose, welcome back, dear sister.
Last week was so fun, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
I want to be a terror of the treacherous. I like
Yes.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
think about that, right? The cholerics, and now we've got a Terror of Demons, and you got Our Lady, Terror of the Treacherous. I mean, that just speaks to the choleric's heart.
Yeah, it does. It does. No, last week was really fun, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce some people who may have not heard much about it, or others who know all about it and got some fresh insight. So I think it's always a worthy conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again. So maybe we can start off this segment, Rose, before we get into the remaining two, maybe a brief overview. What did we cover last week? We talked about two temperaments in particular that were opposites, but maybe you can give our listeners a reminder, a refresher of what we actually discussed in our last segment.
Okay, well, here's a thumbnail. So temperaments are nothing new. 350 years before Jesus was even born, those brilliant Greeks were observing human behavior and putting labels to that. And I know a lot of people hate, don't put a label on me. And that's true. We should not just put a label on somebody. But if I wanted to go to the hospital and get a blood transfusion, I don't care who's donating the blood. I want the right label, A, B, or B, you know. Sometimes labels are really important, but we can never reduce ourselves or other people to a label. So these labels identify four basic sets of human responses and impressions. In other words, without thinking, what's your automatic response to things in life, and how long does it last? Is it deep? Is it light? Is it fleeting? And we all fall into these categories, and there are two sets of opposites. So everybody is a blend of two, and the other two are your opposites. And sometimes you can feel like they're your enemies, but really they're meant to be complementary. So, and the two of them are extroverts and two are natural introverts. And we talked a little bit about, and I love clearing this up, introverts are not shy, wallflower, passive, hesitant people who disappear into the woodwork. That is a weakness. That's what they look like when there's unhealed trauma or all kinds of stuff going on. Introverts can be just like extroverts. They can be as loud or as bossy or as take charge, but they wait first. And this is good. They wait and they watch and they observe and they calculate and then they move. And, you know, sometimes you can hesitate too long. Sometimes that's very prudent. So we just kind of touched on some of those things. You know, it's not just pop psychology. You guys use it in your counseling. I've used it in mine for decades. The Catholic Church has relied upon this teaching of the four timeless temperaments as a spiritual aid to, as you say, to know thyself. And Keone, you said that I loved your little tagline that you have. It's temperaments is know thyself 101, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is a good way to know how beautifully and fearfully and wonderfully you are made in God's image. And each of our temperaments is a reflection of something of Him, which is really beautiful and fun at the same time. Did I do a good job?
You did a
Okay.
you get a good breakdown. Last uh, episode, we talked about two of the temperaments. One was choleric, so we started with one of the extroverted temperaments, and we talked about the opposite temperament, which was the phlegmatic. So, Keone, did you have any further thoughts, or obviously being fresh off of that a week later, any thoughts that kind of stood out from that conversation that we had?
I think for me, it was the emphasis on the temperaments portraying the strength of the human person. And whenever you see it being portrayed as a weakness, it is either because of the other person's wounds, not seeing it as a strength, or the particular individual's wounds, not exercising the strength properly, and it comes out unmoderated. It comes out in an improper time or an improper way. But your temperament is a list of your strengths that God has given you. And it is our job to cultivate them, to moderate them, and to exercise them so that we can be our unique gift to the world, the unique instrument that God made us to be. So I think that was a beautiful reminder because, having worked with individuals day in and day out, you start to learn what the unmoderated version of their strengths look like pretty quickly. And before you know it, it becomes well, here are your strengths, here are your weaknesses. This is kind of you type of thing. Versus I like the twist of no, here are your strengths that God gave you. And because of XYZ habit, environmental situation, unhealed wound, this is how it's come out in a way that isn't the best version of you, isn't how God made you. And so if we do the work in cultivating virtue, now your natural strengths can come alive and probably become exercised in ways that you never thought could be exercised and have an impact in a way that you never thought was possible. So I love the strengths focused approach in looking at the temperament. I just encourage all the listeners, when you start to dive deep into your temperament, those are your natural strengths. And it's our job to remove any impediments, any wounds, any blockages, any bad habits that might get in the way of those strengths not being exercised, because we are missing out on fruit that we can receive from our Lord and give to the world as a result of that.
I love that, and I really appreciate that you mentioned that if you think you have a weakness, it's not necessarily that you are functioning in a weakness. The other person may see it as that.
Mhm.
The other person, out of ignorance or naivete or whatever, is seeing that you have a trait that they consider weakness, but it's not. It's not. That's just
Mhm.
their point of view.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
your point of view,
Yeah. How easily we can be threatened by something that seems foreign, right?
right? Right?
And
Right?
it's
You're not
incredibly
like me,
important. Yeah. And so even you see babies, right? If they see someone that looks different, they get a little hesitant, right? My toddler will kind of come closer to me because it's just foreign. It's kind of a natural protective mechanism, right? And so even as adults, we can look at something and kind of be thrown off by it, right?
Yeah, I think
Right.
that it's definitely a good reflection to be reminded that these are strengths that we can build upon. And I think that's what we intend to do here at Ascending to Virtue. And so when we come back with Rose Sweet, we're going to be diving into the other two temperaments.
Hey, Terry Rodriguez. I'm a monthly donor here in Phoenix, Arizona. Retired Phoenix cop. And I've met Jesse before. And I just want to tell you, you guys were on fire yesterday on the Terry and Jesse show. You guys were on fire. I went to bed thinking, man, what an unwinnable war. But when I got up, I listened to you guys. You know, you guys are doing good work, man. You're doing God's work, and keep doing it. I know it gets exhausting sometimes, but there's people out here that really need the inspiration and the evangelization that you guys are giving us. So my best to you. And I'm Eddie Rodriguez. I'm a monthly donor and proud of it.
This is a minute meditation from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
I am the bread of life. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat it and not die. John chapter 6 verses 48 to 50.
Saint Catherine of Siena once said, "How sad it is when those who have food before them let themselves die of hunger. Take your food, the loving Lord Jesus, who was crucified for us."
Dear Heavenly Father, let us never go hungry for spiritual food. Help us to receive your Son often, in Holy Communion, so that we may be brought together with you, in the union of the Holy Spirit.
This has been a minute meditation from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Terry Barber here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. I'm encouraging people to support realestateforlife.org. They'll have a pro-life agent for you. California's laws for the family are really bad. If you have a young family and you can afford to get out of California, get out and make a new life somewhere where you're not going to have the repressive laws. For example, if your son wants to change his sex and you don't want that to happen, the school can take your child away from you. Yes, that's how bad it is, folks. That's why I'm encouraging you to go to realestateforlife.org. God bless you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Welcome back to Ascent Through Virtue, where there's no hacks, just holiness. Well, I guess there's a few hacks if we're really trying to get after it. When we try to help you with your grit and your grind when it comes to pursuit of holiness. We are with our guest for week number 2, part 2 of Know Thyself 101 with Rose Sweet. You can find her at rosesweet.com. She's an author, speaker, a dear sister in Christ, and does good work in the world of helping people grow in holiness. So we're excited to have her here. Rose, we are back to talk about another temperament. Which one are we going to kick off this episode with?
Well, we're going to talk about our second set of opposites. And
Okay.
I'd like to lead with the perfect, beautiful, deep, passionate melancholy. And sadly, in our language, we've limited the word melancholy to depressed and blue and sad. But in this term, it's much more broad than that. The melancholy is often called the one who's deep. Now, I'd like to qualify that. We're all deep. We're all complex, and we all have the capacity, especially with God's grace, to go deep into the interior and to go deep into the world. But the problem is with the other three, not the melancholies, they'll go deep for about 5 minutes, or a little bit longer. And the melancholy loves to live in the depth. They're great at it. I always like to say, I'm not a melancholy. I'm the opposite. We'll get to that. But I'm like a mermaid. I'm like swimming around in the ocean and I'm lying up on the rocks. And I only go down when I have to have dinner or whatever, but I'm up there on the surface, right? But down in the dark are those mysterious fish that have neon lights and things that you don't see. I love the melancholy. I've always been drawn to the melancholy. So I'm going to read a list like I did last week of some of the top strengths of the melancholy temperament. Analytical, perfectionist, very self-sacrificing, controlled, reserved, sensitive, highly observant, tending to critical, but criticism is a good thing. We need critics. We need people to tear things apart and get to the bottom of things. They're faithful, they're detailed, ceaseless. They're also very idealistic and romantic and passionate and, just that depth, and they just hang on to life. And sometimes they're even otherworldly. They're creative, artistic. In the melancholy world, you might either be a scientist or a ballerina. I mean, a prima ballerina, whatever the depth or the thing is, you will go deep and become a master at it. They're creative, imaginative. They're cautious because they're, and I love this phrase from St. John Paul II, masters of suspicion. They don't trust very easily. And sometimes that's pretty smart. And so they're going to wait with, arms folded and see what's going to happen first and then make up their mind. So they're cautious, they're calculating, they have dry humor, they're meditative, trustworthy, loyal, they're behaved, and they're genuine. They don't buy fluff. They want things real. They want things right. Did I do a pretty good job there, Keone?
Yeah, that sounds like me.
I can
Yeah.
tell. And let me add, they always have perfect hair.
Uh-huh.
Now look at you two guys.
Yep, it's the idealist, right? We don't
Right.
settle with a mediocre hair day going to
Now
work.
let me ask you a question. Both of you are wearing a button-up shirt, right?
Uh-huh.
Did you iron that shirt?
I
Yes.
didn't. My dad does. He's a big iron
Okay.
guy.
That's because you have part phlegmatic in you.
Mm.
And your dad is a super perfectionist. Okay, I'm the opposite, sanguine. I just iron the front and forget the back. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So those are little things that we can take a look at. I don't want to again reduce it to pop psychology, but the melancholy is the world's genius. All the geniuses are part melancholy, and usually also phlegmatic, because the phlegmatic is the steady, stable rock part that allows the melancholy part. Because remember, melancholy will be hooked up either with phlegmatic or choleric. But the phlegmatic allows the melancholy to really study, to really stick with something, to be patient, and not, burn with that burning flame inside. It tempers it. But
Yeah.
somebody like your dad, you're doomed, man, John, because you have the melancholy and the one we talked about last week, the choleric. Those are the two most intense. They're very similar. One's an extrovert, one's an introvert, but they both bring a deep and intense reality to a person. They can be scary. Without, wisdom, grace, kindness, integration, maturity, and holiness, the choleric melancholy is real scary.
Yeah.
The melancholy with the phlegmatic is in my opinion, lovely. And I'm not to put you down, John, but
Well,
and I'm exaggerating here.
sure.
Yeah,
It's
that's
funny.
mom right there, right?
Yeah.
Last time I took the test, I was melancholic, choleric, but I wonder if I took it again, if the phlegmatic would be a little bit higher. I'd have to see. But one quick thing, and then Dad, I'll let you speak. It's we talked about they stay at the depth, right? That they're at the bottom of the ocean, right? It was funny because I was just in Hawaii, and I realize now that I have the inability to float, like just because of my my
Oh, that's good.
anatomy. I literally sink to the bottom, whether I want to or not, whether my technique is perfect. My anatomy does not allow me. I literally just float right to the bottom, right where probably I'm supposed to be in the depths of the ocean.
Oh, that's funny. My husband was a fisherman, and he always talked about the bottom feeders,
Hmm.
those fish that are hiding down under the rocks, and they're just like observing everything.
Hmm.
That's funny. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cute.
So I'm married to a melancholy. And so yeah, what you were sharing was it's really good. I'm glad that we're also teasing out, and I mean even breaking some of the habits I had when we were even talking about phlegmatics last time, about using the wrong adjectives to describe them. And I
Right.
think the same thing with melancholy. Like my wife is definitely, I mean, obviously in the sacrament of holy matrimony, we know this as people in the married vocation, that we're going to sanctify each other, we're going to purify ourselves, we're going to highlight our defectiveness, and lead us into holiness and virtue if we're open to it. But I can say all the things that you're sharing is just the great appreciation I have for my wife, who's a melancholy, who yeah, I mean, for me as a choleric, there's when you're off, it can be intensely off, right? But when you're on, it can be intensely on. And so that deep thoughtfulness that I know my wife has, and um, how she just helps me better as a choleric who reacts very quickly and intensely, where she can kind of bring an even balance to me. So yeah, I
Right.
appreciate the description that you provided with the strengths of a melancholy.
Yeah, no, the melancholies are wonderful. And I've always been drawn to melancholy, men or women. I have my girlfriend who's so melancholy, and she's like you, John. She also has choleric. She Whenever I come into the room, she's like, I don't even realize it. She's checking me out. Rose, you have a hair in your tooth. You have a thing on your face, or your hair is sticking up, and I'm like, God, lighten up. But I appreciate that. She wants me to be the best that I can be. And she doesn't want me to walk into a room of people and have like spinach in my teeth or whatever, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not melancholy. I'm the opposite. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't care. If somebody says you have spinach in your teeth, I'll turn it into a joke. Oh, and she's like going, oh God, oh God, oh God, because the melancholy wants things beautiful and right and perfect. And so does everybody else, but not to the degree that the melancholy does. That's the difference. All of the four, none of the four have anything that's exclusive, but they have it to the nth degree.
Hmm.
So,
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's just it, man. So I was exposed to it first when I took my first quiz, I think was in college. And that like opened the door because I realized all the things that I struggle with, things I'm like, why do I do this? I started to see it as, okay, these are your tendencies,
right.
right? And yeah, we can be so attuned to the what is deficient, what is lacking, what could be better. And I even I tell my wife, like, I am so sorry, babe. It's just naturally, I could very quickly see that should be better. That could have been fixed. There's a blemish there, because, and I like, I'm gonna tell her that. I'm sorry, babe. I just want things to be beautiful and right and well ordered. But if I'm not careful, it can be hypercritical. It can seem perfectionistic. It's almost like I'm never content or able to enjoy
Right.
something as it is if I'm unable to moderate that desire for perfection. And that's been a long journey for me. But that's the continuous fight, is to strive satisfied, right? In anything that we do.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned the word that's very key here is the desire. Each of the four temperaments has a super desire for something. The
Hmm.
phlegmatics really want peace. The cholerics want appreciation for all their hard work. The melancholy wants to be understood, but they secretly think that they're so deep and so awesome that nobody really could understand them. Right? Come on, admit it, admit it, admit it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's about what do you love? What do you attach to? What's your natural? And you talked about St. Paul said in Romans 7, I think it is 15:20. I do the things that I don't want to do, and I don't do the things I want to do. And so that's what you were talking about. You're hardwired to respond the way you do, but you're learning to temper it appropriately, and that's a beautiful thing. That's virtue. It's virtue.
Exactly.
You want to, should we move over to the sanguine, or do we have time? Or
We'll say that for the next segment. Will you talk about in your, but maybe you can kind of open this. And again, I encourage the readers to get Rose's book, My Type of Holiness. But can you maybe highlight? I know in your part 3 of the book, you talk about understanding the melancholy. And is there any other tips and tricks? Because now maybe the listeners are out there and like, oh, I'm finally understood, right? I've got an understanding, perhaps a label, we'll use that loosely, but of myself or the person that I'm interacting with. Because I know even for us as a family, and we actually did, Keone, we had you guys do the inventory back in, I think when you're still in high school, actually. But it opened my eyes to the dynamics of the family and the differences, even if we probably answered it imperfectly to a certain degree. But when you think about understanding the melancholy, is there anything that we can offer up our listeners that would be very helpful when you're interacting with a person who fits that temperament?
Yeah, I like what I like what you said about the whole understanding thing. And let me just give you an example. Every time we would go somewhere, my husband, now remember the melancholies tend to worry because they really care a lot. They really do. So every time we would go somewhere, I've locked all the doors, closed all the windows, everything. He'd go around and check every lock. And I would be standing there at the garage waiting to get in the car and going, I locked everything. And he would just ignore me and just go to the next one and check it. And it would drive me insane. But I realized he needs to check the locks. And I need to give him the space to do that and not take it personally.
Understanding is important. We're going to get into the next segment and talk about the sanguine.
Here's a great way to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Do you have an old car you want to get rid of, motorcycle, RV, or boat? Simply call 855-500-7433, and when they sell that vehicle, a portion of that money comes right back to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio. It's an easy way to do it. I want to thank you for it. Call 855-500-7433. God love you and your family.
This is a catechetical minute from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Just as the gestation of our first birth took place in water, so the water of baptism truly signifies that our birth in the divine life is given to us in the Holy Spirit. Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 694. The most basic elements of human life are often the actual tools that God uses in our relationship with Him. Water is one such element God has used, from the flood, to the Red Sea, to the Jordan River. Father, you have made all things with this in mind. May we recognize these signs of your love in creation.
This has been a catechetical minute from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Terry Barber here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. I'm encouraging people to support realestateforlife.org. They'll have a pro-life agent for you. California's laws for the family are really bad. If you have a young family and you can afford to get out of California, get out and make a new life somewhere where you're not going to have the repressive laws. For example, if your son wants to change his sex and you don't want that to happen, the school can take your child away from you. Yes, that's how bad it is, folks. That's why I'm encouraging you to go to realestateforlife.org. God bless you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
We are with our dear friend Rose Sweet from rosesweet.com, talking to you about temperaments. Know Thyself 101 is the episode title. This is part 2 of that. And we just ventured from our dear friend on the introverted side, melancholy. And we're going to be headed to the opposite temperament. Rose, which one is that?
That's the playful, silly, childlike sanguine. Now, and I am sanguine, and my other one is choleric, which we talked about last week. So I'm a natural leader. I like to take charge, but I'll make sure it's fun and everybody has a good time. When you hear some of these temperaments, everybody wants to be, I always say there's really only 2 temperaments, sanguines and sanguine wannabes. Because when you hear it, everybody, oh, that's me. I want to be that. But it's like sanguines and cholerics, the 2 extroverts, are really rare. You know, we're not evenly distributed in culture. Because remember, one is an intensely powerful, take charge leader, although everybody can be a good leader in a different way. But think about the animal kingdom, like a pride of lions. How many, how many male king lions are there? A few. And the rest are all females and kids, right? So the sanguine is an extrovert, but not to the intensity of the other extrovert. And the sanguine is the opposite of the melancholy. Let me just read some of these words. Descriptions. Affectionate. And let me just say this. The sanguines don't have any filter. When they come into a room, let's say I had never met you guys, and we'd been on this, doing this for a long time, and I finally met you in person. I would run into your personal space and be like all over you, hugging you and kissing you. And sometimes that's not good. I didn't ask permission, and especially being melancholy, it's like, whoa, whoa, girl, whoa, whoa, whoa. Just because we know each other doesn't give you license to come in and invade me like that. So the sanguines, by nature are just warm and loving and affectionate to everybody, but they need to learn with maturity to hold that back appropriately. They're playful, sociable, charming, demonstrative, merry, trusting, sometimes too trusting, lively, childlike, plucky, bouncy, spirited. They're a promoter. They're impulsive. They are all about the grand gestures. Yes, Lord, I will die for you, and then when it comes, he runs away. Peter is known to be part sanguine. They're enthusiastic. They're a natural cheerleader. They don't get jealous or suspicious of anybody, and they're just out there rooting for everybody. But I've learned the hard way, you better hold that back. You can't trust everybody. You can't just go be best friends with everybody, because you'll get chewed up and spit out, and you could hurt people too. So, but they're fun and they're delightful. They're inspiring. They tend to exaggerate to create a beautiful story. They love to be the center of attention. They want affection, and they're a little bit cheeky. So that's the sanguine. And the melancholy does not like the sanguine in general. If the melancholy wants order and grace and elegance and beauty and perfection and order, which are all good things, the sanguine doesn't have that by nature. But the sanguine will rush in when the world is broken and all the melancholies are depressed because things aren't perfect and the world's fallen apart. The sanguine will come in and cheer people up and bring cookies and make a party. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not good. Let's say somebody in your family member died and you're all at the funeral, right? That's not the time for a sanguine to crack a joke. But if the sanguine is not mature or integrated, and they're nervous about being at a funeral and they're worried about what everybody's thinking, they'll rush to be the center of attention and be very, very inappropriate. So, all of them have strengths, all of them had weaknesses, but the strengths of the sanguine are they're great. And I remember when my husband and I would get, and he's very melancholy, I was very sanguine, and we'd get in an argument. He'd go, I just want your sanguine back. Because what would happen when we'd get in an argument, my choleric would do this to my sanguine and go, get out of the way. We're fixing the problem. We're setting him straight, And that was like, he hated that part of me, and rightly so. He would just say, I want your sanguine back. I go, well, you can't just have one and not the other, So I love that my husband Bob was really open to learning about these temperaments. And he, same thing as you guys said, why didn't I learn this earlier? It really helped him to know himself and especially his real estate clients. So it's a valuable, valuable tool.
Yeah, I married a sanguine.
You
So,
did.
and that has been actually really healing because of her natural tendencies towards optimism and just the playfulness, and things don't have to be so serious, and we
Mm,
can move on from things. You don't need to sit and harbor it or like analyze it, and let's just move on. It's been such a gift because it's like, wow, like you can do that. You lived your whole life doing that, and here you are, and I love you. And there's this freedom that you can recognize when you actually start to appreciate the strengths of a sanguine. There's a lightness, there's a joy that you
right.
can embrace, where we tend towards sorrow, towards what is
Right.
deficient, And so I think it's a huge kind of complementary relationship that has been so, I think, powerful. And that's the kind of the battle partner that I want, like a
Right.
complete opposite set of blind spots, weaknesses, proclivities. And I think it's allowed us, when you actually embrace it and are humble enough to mature yourself and to see the fruits of your battle partner, it's allowed us to grow as a result, and have a great partnership as a result of it.
Here's where we should, I like this, you brought this up. Here's where we should be the same, not necessarily in our temperament, but in our values, our
Mhm.
principles, our beliefs. When we're united in that, we can tolerate the edges of the opposite temperament that tend to trigger us or get under our skin every once in a while. Because it's just going to be different.
Mhm.
Men and women are not compatible. You've heard that before. We're not
Mhm.
compatible. We're
Mhm.
completely different.
Mhm.
But vive la différence.
Mhm. Mhm.
hmm Well, and I think the idea, again, taking this into the context of especially marriage and just I think relationships in general, if you see the other person, one, as a gift, as we've been talking about, as we kind of kicked it off, but that as an opportunity to learn and grow, because while we may have these natural inclinations towards a specific response, reaction, emotion, whatever it may be. Is it fair to say, Rose, that we should be working on trying to take the strengths of all of those and kind of be somewhere in the middle? Is that more of the where we would be kind of the virtue in the middle, or what's your take on that?
I've heard that over the years, and I've I've tried to be more melancholy about that and go deeper than just that thing. I don't think our four temperaments are meant to disappear into a amalgam of the middle. I think our temperaments are meant to stand as they are without the impediments, as you said.
Mm,
To not so that the sanguine doesn't need to become more like the melancholy, but that the sanguine can look to the melancholy and learn from the melancholy to help bring his or her traits back to their ordered beauty and perfection. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
no, it does. It does. Go ahead, Karen.
Otherwise, then we have this thing where we all have to, I've heard this too. We have to have the strengths of all and the weaknesses of none. It's like, then we're all just going to
Mm,
disappear into each other. So
Mhm.
I don't think a woman should try to be more like a man.
no.
I think a
Mhm.
woman should look to the man and say, oh, he approaches problems in this way that I don't. I can learn from that, but I don't want to be a man. I
Mhm.
love being a woman, and
Mhm.
hmm
I'm going to stay that way.
Right.
hmm
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's, you look at the strengths of another temperament and how different it can be from yours. And as you learn and you see it executed and done and you appreciate it, it perfects you. as a result, so that you can better moderate and temper and perfect your own natural
Right.
strengths. Because when
Right.
they're unmoderated, that's when they become vicious and disruptive. Is that what
Right.
you're
And
saying?
again, yes, and we've talked about this. The problem really isn't the temperament. The problems manifest through the temperament.
Hmm.
So if I'm scared or insecure, as a sanguine, I'll try to be the center of attention and take over the conversation. If I'm scared and insecure as a phlegmatic, I'll run in the back room and lock the door. If I'm scared and insecure as a choleric, I'll start telling everybody what to do and shut up. So we're all fearful and insecure, but we manifest it. It's revealed through our temperament in different ways.
Mm.
So as you guys, this is what you guys do, is get to the disorder, get to the wrong thinking
Hmm.
and everything that's disordered and not integrated, disintegrated. And when you bring that back and you develop virtue, you're just going to shine. You're going to be a
Mhm.
beautiful melancholy, a beautiful choleric, a beautiful phlegmatic, and a
Mhm.
beautiful sanguine.
Yeah. Well, it speaks to, one, the beauty of the vocation of marriage. Also, you think about the religious and their brotherhood or sisterhood. You even think about like a company and building a team, how
Right.
important it is to understand the temperament so that you can have this well-oiled machine. We can learn from each other so that we don't see the whole world from our own natural lens. Right. And so I think, as you know, again, emphasizing these strengths and seeing the strengths in others and allowing those strengths to perfect my strengths, now you start to see how momentum and growth and healing and productivity and true change can really be achieved by leveraging all four temperaments the best
Right.
way you
No,
can.
and work is really important. I do a lot of work with my coaching clients on their work situations, because their work problems are really people problems, and their
Hmm.
people problems are usually shown up in the temperament.
Hmm.
This guy isn't moving fast enough for me. Well, does he do his work well? Is he intelligent? Does he deliver on time? Yes. Then give him some extra space that you don't, or time that you don't give other people. He's wired to, he's going to move a little more slowly,
Hmm.
but then he's going to shine. So, that's just an example.
Hmm. Well, and I think there's this other part, and I think we'll probably even take this into the next segment. And I'd be interested to see what your experience was, especially with clients, for all of us, about how we can learn and how we can fully integrate with our in a healthy way as far as understanding each other. So we'll get into this at the last segment after we get after the break. And we're here with Rose Sweet, rosesweet.com.
Jesus said in Luke 17, "When you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are unprofitable servants. We have only done our duty.'" According to St. John of the Cross, God is pleased with the little deeds we do in secret. He takes more pleasure in these than in a multitude of grand works that we may do out of the desire to be seen by others. May God help us to do the things that please Him, and not just to appear great in the eyes of others.
We got Ernesto from Long Beach.
I just wanted to comment, and I just wanted to thank you guys. And I kind of wanted to encourage people that are listening, maybe that are not donating, because honestly, I got to be honest, I used to think you guys were a little
Too over the top. That's right.
If God gave us a lot, and I have the blessing of listening to all this, I just want to call all the people. I got 5 kids. I don't make a lot of money, and I'm still donating to you guys.
God bless you, brother. You're amazing.
We have to do this. We have to do the extra. And it's not even the extra. People see it like it's extra. Kneeling for communion, saying your rosary, saying the Divine Mercy Chaplet. It is not extra. It's what the church tells us to do. 29 years old, 5 kids, and I thank you guys. But everybody else, man, get on fire. Fight for the truth, man. I know what I'm telling you guys. There's
I
so
love
much
it.
out there.
Terry Barber here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. I'm encouraging people to support realestateforlife.org. They'll have a pro-life agent for you. California's laws where the family are really bad. If you have a young family and you can afford to get out of California, get out and make a new life somewhere where you're not going to have the repressive laws. For example, if your son wants to change his sex and you don't want that to happen, the school can take your child away from you. Yes, that's how bad it is, folks. That's why I'm encouraging you to go to realestateforlife.org. God bless you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
If we are calm and persevering, we shall find not only ourselves, but our souls, and with that, God himself. From the great Saint Padre Pio, that's how you open your chapter on perfecting your temperament, Rose, quoting the great Saint Padre Pio. What does that mean, perfecting your temperament? You know, we just went through in these last 2 episodes, all 4 temperaments, and kind of broke open a little bit, talked about their strengths, talked about how we can grow in our understanding of them and ourselves ultimately, and then ultimately of God. But what does that mean, perfecting your temperament?
Well, I think it's what we talked about before the break. Not making your temperament disappear or become like the other, but to remain in its perfected beauty where you're functioning and living and thinking and breathing in your natural strengths. And you have identified disordered thinking, you've healed unhealed trauma wounds, you've educated yourself, you've availed yourself of the sacraments to infuse your life with grace and growth and virtue. I think that's what it means to perfect your temperament. What do you think?
No, I like that idea. And I think it was where I was going with some of this, because I think oftentimes when you hear mixed opinions, right, about labels, and then, you know, you talked about this idea of just kind of like meshing into one. And it, you know, understanding and growing in self-knowledge in particular with the temperaments isn't about, well, now I have an excuse and a free pass. We're not trying to limit ourselves from growing and understanding ourselves and others. And I think that's what we see in probably all the work that we do with our clients, with the people that we interact with, is that, hey, I'm this color, just is who I am, right? Or you're always this, you know, we use absolutes, right? You're always like, oh, well, yeah, just everything's always about fun and games with you. And we find ourselves in contention with one another rather than using using it as an opportunity to cover our areas of weakness or blind spots, right? Like if I have my wife who's a melancholy, who can be analytical and wants beauty and goodness and has that depth, I can be like, throw an idea at her and say, what do you think about this? Right? Or she can be sitting on an idea that she's been really kind of contemplating and thinking about and going, go execute this, choleric, right? Like and she does that a lot. Hey, I've been thinking about this. This would be really good for men or for go. And what do you, I mean, that's kind of what I was wanting to chat about on this segment.
Right. Okay. So let's say you go to your wife and you want her input as the melancholy, and so she's not just analyzing it, she's analyzing it to death, right? And now you're anxious to execute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of waiting for her and pointing the finger at her and go, you need to get moving, you know, why are you taking so long? Just make the decision. This is what she does. And if I really need to move more quickly, I can without criticizing her for how she is and who she is.
Mm-hmm.
You just accept the person the way they are. You don't accept, you know, abuse and disrespect and all that other stuff. But you expect that sanguines are not going to be typically academics. The only reason that I can go deep into the stuff that I do is because I have the fire and the fuel of my choleric intensity. But my sanguine just wants to have cookie parties and go to the mall. And you know what? I admit it. It's shallow, it's stupid, but it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to try to make myself more melancholy. I'm going to love the melancholy and respect the melancholy. I have to read this. It's been driving me crazy. Okay. This is out in my book. Here's Patty. She's a sanguine. My sanguine friend Patty had a twinkle in her eye when she shared this about herself. I snort laugh. Frequently and loudly. You're welcome. I love show tunes and musicals and probably know all the words by heart. And I can fit my fist into my mouth. Now look how tacky the melancholy goes. Fit your fist in. That's not very ladylike. I mean, where did that come from? This is the sanguine.
Mhm.
So, okay, if she's giving a presentation in front of the women's group at church, she can't say that. But if that's just how she is and it comes out, God love her. That's who she is. So just accept it and don't worry about it. And, take it. If the other temperament is triggering you, ask, what are you afraid of? What am I afraid of? Oh, when I go to the cocktail party, my wife is going to talk about her fist in her mouth and I'll be totally humiliated because I care too much about what everybody else thinks about me. Maybe that's something you need to work on. I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's about looking at yourself as much as you're looking at the other person.
Do you think, Rose, it's possible for your temperament to change as a result of traumas? They were once
No.
that sanguine little kid, and then they had that abuse. All of a sudden, melancholy, like, thick through and through.
Okay. So melancholy is sad and sorrowful and sees the negative and suspicious, right? And that can happen to a sanguine, that can happen to anybody, but your temperament doesn't change. Your eye color doesn't change. Your gender doesn't change. It can be damaged, wounded, hurt, shaped, but it is not changed. And I have a whole section in the book. What can shape our temperament is our culture, our maturity, our education, our history, abuse, addictions, but it doesn't change it. Your raw material is your raw material forever. God meant you to have that gift. And even in the midst, I've seen myself, and I think that my husband passed away earlier this year. It was one of the most horrible things in my life. It was like sanguines aren't meant to see the trauma and go through the sorrow that I went through. But I didn't try to make light of it. And I tried to be present to all of it. But even in this horrible time in my life, every once in a while I'd crack a joke and it just came naturally. So it's like you can put something over your grass, or cover up your yard or whatever, but those little blades of grass are going to come through, and the temperament is going to come through somehow, some way, even when there's trauma and abuse. For all the temperaments.
So I guess one way of looking at it, and let me know if you agree with this, is although via experiences, good or bad, you can develop an easier ability to manifest maybe something that is more natural to another temperament. It doesn't change your natural inclinations via your temperament. You've just, because of your experiences, can maybe more frequently exhibit something that is more natural to another temperament, but your nature hasn't changed.
That's correct. And I talk about this in my book. It's called masking. Sometimes we mask out of shame or fear and we don't reveal our temperament because of rejection, but sometimes we do it out of necessity. I used to be in a real estate career where I was an expert witness in court. And when I was on the witness stand, I had to look credible and sound credible. I couldn't crack jokes or talk about fitting my fist in my mouth, right? Even though I had an audience in the jury. Audience, yay! So I had to become melancholy, but I did it willingly, not rejecting my sanguine, but putting her aside so that I could speak to the judge and the jury in a way that they could best receive the information. And in that masking, it was a virtue. But I didn't become melancholy or want to be or try to be melancholy. And I wasn't ashamed of my sanguine. She just had to stay home that day.
It's through the use of the will.
Right. And the intellect.
Right, of course.
This is a good thing. This is a good thing to be more like the melancholies are, even though it doesn't come naturally. I'm going to work very hard at doing this for a greater good without losing myself.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's powerful reflections, and I think those are good things that people should be meditating on. And I think going back, even to Keone's question, when he talks about the effect of perhaps trauma and abuse, and I know in the work that we do at Servium Institute as well, we try to get a as best we can, a holistic view of folks, not just their temperament, but also adverse childhood experiences, family of origin information, to try to understand that. And so, as we kind of round out this episode and these past two parts on knowing thyself, Rose, what would you recommend to the viewers outside of, again, getting Rose's book, Striving for Holiness, right? My type of holiness and striving for sainthood. But to kind of get the fuller picture, to dive deeper in this topic and to perhaps even assess themselves, any recommendations on how to approach this? Maybe they're picking up what we're laying down, they're buying what we're selling, they're like, oh, you named me, I was in either the last episode or this episode, or this explains why me and my kids are always bumping, or bumping up against each other's wounds, or me and my spouse. What can we share with them as far as next steps?
Well, how can I not say get the book? Because I did try to put all that, the most basic stuff in that. But take the quiz. Quizzes aren't perfect. They're not all inclusive. And that's why I always say, don't just limit it to pop psychology. But go share this with somebody who knows you and loves you and who also gets this, and just start having the conversation. I remember teaching this, like you did, John, to my kids when they were very little. And I loved it. I could see the sensitivity. They would go into the grocery store and they go, that lady's really phlegmatic. And I go, well, what makes you say that? And well, she's just moving real slow, and she could also be sick or tired, be careful. Don't, so again, I'd have to help them grow into it. But then they would see some loud, arrogant, prideful, out of control choleric somewhere in a store and go, choleric? I go, yeah, out of control. Right. We're not going to be that way. So, teach your kids, live it out, get excited about it, pray about it. Ask, what do you think God wants you to do with this? It completely changed my life and all my relationships, my parenting, my marriage, my work. I just love it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't know, Kenny, what your thoughts on. I would say this is one of the things we know is game changer when it comes to just self-knowledge.
Yeah, well, because when you do this type of work, now you recognize how God is trying to work in your life every day, through your own wounds, through your interactions, the things that you would usually point the finger at, or become frustrated. Now you're like, oh, Lord, you're perfecting me through that experience, through that person in my life, because I now know my tendencies. I know how they're being disordered or disrupted because of that wound or that person. And you want me to now cultivate the virtue so that I can now be a gift. I can perfect my own natural strengths, right? So it just makes this process of holiness beautiful, right? Purposeful.
Absolutely.
Well, Rose, we thank you for joining us again on Ascend Through Virtue to talk about Knowing Thyself 101. We had two parts, one, and this is part two. Again, go to rosesweet.com, get her book, My Type of Holiness, Striving for Sainthood, learn about the temperament that God gave you, and join us for next week when we get back to this thing called habits that help you grow in holiness. So God bless you and keep you. Thank you, Rose. Pick up her book. Go check her out. We'll see you, especially you men, this week, Saturday, at our men's conference. God bless you and keep you.
Saint Faustina's Prayer for Priests. O my Jesus, I beg thee on behalf of the whole Church, grant it love and the light of thy Spirit, and give power to the words of priests, so that hardened hearts might be brought to repentance and return to thee, O Lord. Lord, give us holy priests. Thou thyself maintain them in holiness. O divine and great High Priest, may the power of thy mercy accompany them everywhere, and protect them from the devil's traps and snares, which are continually being set for the souls of priests. May the power of thy mercy, O Lord, shatter and bring to naught all that might tarnish the sanctity of priests. For thou canst do all things. Amen. Virgin most powerful, pray for us.
Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.